It's May 19th, 1984. The time is 7 p.m. Ralph Macchio heads to the back row of the Baronet and Coronet Theater in Los Angeles. With him is his future wife Phyllis, director John G. Avildsen, writer Robert Mark Kamen, and producer Jerry Weintraub. All of them are about to watch a sneak preview of their recently completed film, The Karate Kid. Little did they know that they were about to witness a once-in-a-lifetime reaction to their Underdog movie. What is it about the magic of The Karate Kid that spawned 3 sequels, an animated series, a video game, a remake, and a revival television series that spans over 40 years? Well, sit back, relax, catch a fly with a pair of chopsticks, and let's take a look at The Karate Kid, an Underdog Blockbuster. In an excerpt from Ralph Macchio's book, Waxing On, which I highly recommend, he describes the way the audience reacted to the movie at the sneak preview. To quote the book, LaRusso assumes the position. I could feel the dam about to burst. And then, the kick. The crescendo. Boom! A thunderous roar from the Baronet Theater crowd as they leapt to their feet, cheering and hugging and high-fiving as if at a major league sporting event. It was a thrilling rush of emotion, and I was sucked into the vortex like I had just won the World Series, Super Bowl, and Stanley Cup at the same time. I don't think I even remember the credits rolling. Wow, that must have been a kick for Macchio. That's right, I said kick. Wasn't that funny? No, it wasn't. Who had just 1 year prior debuted on movie screens with the role of Johnny Cade in The Outsiders. This was different, though. This was a sensation that had only just begun. In the 1980s, we had some fantastic mentor-mentee relationships on screen. Yoda and Luke Skywalker in The Empire Strikes Back, as well as Marty McFly and Doc Brown in Back to the Future. But in between those two franchises came a movie that was far more down to earth. One in which a new kid in town, Daniel LaRusso, gets bullied by a group of overzealous karate students. Everything changes when he meets Mr. Miyagi, a maintenance man at his apartment building, who is also a master of karate. After a near-fatal beatdown, Mr. Miyagi saves Daniel and takes him on as his karate student. Daniel not only learns to defend himself, but also finds balance and friendship that will last a lifetime. When Macchio was informed of an audition taking place in New York for a movie titled The Karate Kid, he thought to himself, what is this, a Saturday morning cartoon? Regardless, a few days later, he found himself at director John Avildsen's apartment, where auditions were taking place. According to Waxing On, the apartment was full of teen actors trying out for the part of Daniel Webber. Oh, by the way, the Daniel LaRusso character was originally named Daniel Webber. He overheard some actors in the waiting area making fun of the title of the film. And while he initially had the same reaction, he now found himself feeling protective of the project. Anyway, when he entered the room where Avildsen was waiting, camcorder in hand, the audition began. Something we need to realize about John Avildsen, director of the first Rocky film, is that he seemed to record everything about the pre-production of this movie. In fact, on YouTube, viewers have been blessed with loads of rehearsal footage for almost every scene from The Karate Kid. This method would help him see what was and was not working before even rolling an inch of film. And while John knew he liked Ralph for the role, the instant that he met him that day in his apartment, it would take several more sessions of auditions and screen tests before he officially offered the role to him. Other actors who were considered for the role were Charlie Sheen, Robert Downey Jr., Sean Penn, and C. Thomas Howell. Interestingly enough, the makers of Back to the Future, when looking for an actor to play Marty McFly, had considered C. Thomas Howell as a contender. They also called Ralph Macchio in for an interview, after the huge success of Karate Kid. Nothing came of it, but can you imagine if Macchio had played Daniel LaRusso and Marty McFly? He'd be the reigning king of the 80s, hands down. Speaking of Back to the Future, Elizabeth Shue came in for her audition with Ralph soon after he was cast. She would go on to play Jennifer Parker in Back to the Future Parts 2 and 3. John Avildsen found the chemistry of Macchio and Shue to be very compelling, if not unusual. He joked with Macchio after Elizabeth left her audition that she was the strawberry shortcake and he was the cannoli. Their on-screen romance was a big part of why the film was so likable, in my opinion. They're cute, don't you think? And they have genuine chemistry. When it came time to cast for the role of Mr. Miyagi, the studios were originally considering actor Toshiro Mifune. However, he didn't speak much English, and he also didn't have that fatherly warmth that was needed for the role. John Avildsen was keen on Pat Morita and fought tooth and nail to get him cast. However, everyone except Avildsen was against the idea of Pat Morita portraying Mr. Miyagi because he was a comedian, his most well-known role at that point being Arnold on Happy Days. Producer Jerry Weintraub wouldn't even consider Morita for the part until Avildsen cunningly brought in a VHS tape of Morita's audition and played it for Jerry without him knowing what it was. Needless to say, after watching the video, Weintraub changed his tune. After a screen test between Macchio and Morita was finished, the deal was sealed. It can't be stated enough just how important Pat's contribution was to this film series. His chemistry with Macchio was pitch perfect and a once-in-a-lifetime screen match. It had to be. For example, the scene where Daniel is gifted the yellow Ford convertible from Miyagi's collection wonderfully sums up the power of this relationship. After all the training and bonding they had been through up until that point and right before the tournament, Daniel turns to Miyagi and says, "You're the best friend I ever had." We as the audience believe it, and we can tell that will be the case for the rest of their lives. It's one of my favorite scenes in the movie and a beautiful understated moment between this duo. I'll cover more on Pat Morita's Karate Kid journey in videos to come, as well as Billy Zabka's journey, one which would take over 30 years to come full circle. To prep for their roles, Macchio, Morita, and the Cobra Kai gang endured a lot of training. Macchio in particular had to go through a boot camp style fitness regimen where a coach would come to his hotel, wake him up at the butt crack of dawn, and work out vigorously. This was followed by a daily itinerary of martial arts training, rehearsals, BMX bike lessons, and soccer ball juggling. Macchio and Morita were trained in the Goju Ryu style of karate. They were also trained in a more relaxed and zen way, as opposed to the training that the actors playing the Cobra Kais went through. They were trained in a more aggressive Korean-style karate called Tang Soo Do. This would help differentiate the vibe between the rival teams. As mentioned before, director John Avildsen was a big proponent of taping all the rehearsals before filming began. This gave the actors a sense of history when working together. They got to live the scenes and tweak it to make things sharper and more alive. Not too many directors give this gift to their actors. Avildsen was willing to get in the trenches with them. He provided a world-building process that is unrivaled compared with films of today. Once all the prep work was done, filming began on Halloween 1983 with a 42-day shooting schedule. The movie was also shot in order, which is not typical of most movie productions. This would help the actors to feel like they were living the movie in the order it was written. I'm sure there are more examples, but the only other movie I can think of that used this technique is Castaway. Overall, filming went smoothly with only a few minor setbacks. For example, the scene where Daniel catches the fly with chopsticks for the first time delayed the production a bit. In the 80s, CGI was rarely used, so after many failed attempts to catch a real fly and also using plastic ones tied to a fishing string, the crew ended up using a combination of their failed attempts. This involved real flies that were tied to a fishing line as it flew around, and they also used a fake plastic fly glued to the chopsticks for the part where it was already caught. By the power of editing, it made the scene look believable. Although, look at this. But to be fair, I never noticed this before I found out this information, so anyway. Also during the Halloween fight scene where the Cobra Kais beat the ever-living crap out of Daniel LaRusso, things got painful. Between camera setups of the roundhouse kick delivered by Johnny to Daniel, the distance between actors had changed slightly. Consequently, Billy Zabka accidentally gave Ralph Macchio a real roundhouse kick to the chin. After this, the crew had to stop filming for the night. Macchio and Zabka still joke about it to this day. "He kicked my face." Filming finally wrapped on December 16th, 1984. The film became a huge success, grossing $90 million at the US box office in its original release. The film also reinvigorated Pat Morita's career with an Oscar nomination for his role as Mr. Miyagi. A major reason credited for his Oscar nomination was the drunken scene where Mr. Miyagi tells Daniel about serving in the military while his wife and child died in the Japanese internment camps. The studio originally wanted to cut the scene out due to a perceived issue with pacing, but once again Avildsen fought to keep it in, and the movie was richer for it. After the film's success, a slew of rip-offs were created. Movies like Sidekicks, Three Ninjas, Surf Ninjas, and Showdown. This film is especially similar to the broad strokes of the Karate Kid plotline. Listen to this. It's about a teenager named Ken, new in town from Kansas with his single mother, who who gets a beatdown from a jealous boyfriend of the girl he falls for, named Julie. In order to stand up to his new foe, Ken learns karate from his school's janitor, Billy, played by Billy Blanks, the Thai Bo guy whose infomercials you probably saw in the 90s. Karate Kid stuff ensues. So anyway, let's go back to that day in 1984 when Ralph Macchio was riding away from that first euphoric sneak preview of The Karate Kid. Producer Jerry Weintraub, as recounted by Macchio in his book Waxing On, leaned over to Macchio and said this: "We're gonna be making a couple of these." And oh, was he correct. The legacy of this movie would ripple on into the future, where it resides to this day, stronger than ever. But we'll get into that in another video. Don't forget to do a crane kick to the like and subscribe buttons, and wax on the notification bell. Get him a body bag! Yeah!